Hello, fellow wordaholics. Today, Away with Words lingers longer for a cuppa by the beach, takes the rough with the fairway, learns the difference between cake and ale, and if you think all that sounds like I'm going on a bender, well, ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Hey now, say now, let's get away now, away with words. Words like we say each and every day, away with words. What's in a name? What do you say? So many words at the end of the day. I talk, you talk, they talk, we all talk, away with words. Away with words, away. Coming to the beach at Southwold is a delight for young and old alike. These beach huts are one of the most famous sights along the Suffolk coast. They seem to sum up what people like about Southwold. It's a traditional, old-fashioned seaside resort that seems to be stuck in time. And some of the huts have weird and wonderful names. But how do they choose them? Oh, well, you could name them after the cat, I suppose, and what you say to the neighbour's cat, shoo, shoo. And if you like chocolate, why not? And yes, the dog house. I'm very familiar with that place. Everybody loves the seaside. There are so many different things to do. You can play all sorts of games on the beach, even golf. There are lots of words associated with the game of golf. Excuse me a moment, I think I'd like a word with the producer. Just bear with me. Do you really want me to explain all the words of golf with this? You don't think it looks too ridiculous? I mean, can't we go to a real golf course and wear proper golf clothes? We can! I don't believe it. Cut. I'm humming around with Colin Jenkins, the professional at Crettingham Golf Club. That's why I've got on my +4s. So named because the material goes 4 inches below the knee.
Lovely putt, Neil.
Oh.
Hard lines.
Is that a gimme?
That's a gimme, Neil. Pick it up.
Well, a gimme is just what it sounds like. It's a free shot. You get that in match play. But had I not got my par and gone 1 over, that would have been a bogey. And a bogey gets its name from where else? The bogeyman. Another word for the devil. And who else does a golfer really play against? Unfortunately, I've hit my tee shot into the rough. It should, of course, be on the fairway. The fairway is a 17th century naval term for a navigable passage, meaning clear and unobstructed. I wish I had such a next shot. There he goes. Golf was so popular in Scotland that even Mary, Queen of Scots, played it in France, where she was being educated. Being a member of royalty, she was helped around the course by other pupils, cadets, or cadets, as they say in France. Since then, anyone who helps someone around a course with their clubs has been known as a caddie. Ah, there you are. I'll have the 9-iron, I think, please. Thank you. Sand down, please. Oh dear, I seem to have taken a divot. A divot is a Scottish 16th century word for a slab of turf that went on a roof. It's extremely bad form not to replace a divot on a golf course. Oh yes. Well done, sir.
Thank you, Neil.
A birdie. The word birdie is used because it came from 1903 when a certain A.B. Smith, A.B. to his friends, was playing golf in Atlanta City, and he made a putt that made his score 1 under par. "What a bird of a shot," he exclaimed. And since then, people have used the expression to mean one under par, a birdie. I think I'll concede, actually, Colin.
Jolly good.
Let's repair to the 19th hole. What say you?
Great idea.
And this is it, the 19th hole, known the world over as the Clubhouse Bar. Cheers, Colin.
Cheers, Neil.
That's good beer. Is it local?
It is, yeah.
I may have to look into this. Brewing is one of the oldest inventions of mankind. This is Adnam's Brewery in Southwold, and brewing has been going on here since 1345. Who would have thought that something as simple as the action of enzymes being secreted by yeast, converting simple sugars like fructose and glucose into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide, could produce something as complex and yet delicious as beer? Unlike golf, where the mashie is used to get the ball out of the rough, in brewing, mashing is the process of mixing warm water with grain in order to produce wort. Wort is a word that comes from the Middle Ages and means cure. That's why so many plants are called wort. For example, liverwort would be a cure for complaints of the liver. Lungwort, likewise, and toothwort, or even wartwort. Who knows? This is my newfound friend, Michael Powell Evans, the head brewer. He knows all there is to know about brewing beer. So what's up here, Michael?
Oh, we're on our way to the malt room.
The malt room. So what exactly is malt?
Well, that's barley that's coming off the fields, dried, dressed, germinated, and then dried again. And in the drying process, it gets roasted.
Right.
And it's the level of roast that gives you different flavours.
And so this is mixed with warm water to make the wort?
Yeah, this is crushed first, actually.
Crushed?
Yes,
right.
in the mill.
Ah, so where does the saying grist to the mill come from?
Well, to get a range of flavours in the beer and some complexity, you have to have a range of malts. And so it's all grist to the mill for your range of malts in the brewery.
As simple as that. So, Michael, what's in these huge bags here?
Hops.
Hops. Is it true the Romans brought the hops to Britain?
No, they came over in the Middle Ages with the Flemish wool weavers.
Right, so what's the difference between an ale and a beer?
Well, ale comes from the Norse word earl, where it was flavoured with all sorts of hedgerow stuff, like nettles or coriander. And beer is flavoured with hops.
So that's the difference. A beer is flavoured with hops, and an ale is flavoured with anything you can find.
Yes.
So where does beer come from, the word beer?
That's the French word from France.
Oh, how disappointing.
You've got a Norse word and you've got a French word.
I suppose we have given the French le football.
Yes, and the weekend.
The weekend, indeed. These are the fermentation vessels, and traditionally, right next door would be the Customs and Excise Office. There, the brewer would have to write down everything he'd done, every ingredient, every amount, in a logbook. If he made a mistake, he'd have to cross out the entry with two parallel lines, write the next entry cocked up at an angle of 45 degrees, showing there'd been a mistake. And that's where we get the phrase cock up from. Well, I hope I haven't cocked up that information for you. Well, enough of the brewing. Time to head for the pub. Any chance of a lift, Chris?
Yeah, come aboard.
Thank you. These barrels of beer behind me have to sit in the pub's cellars for 2 weeks before the beer is drinkable. In the 13th century, beer was tested by an ale connoisseur. Connoisseur comes from the French connoisseur, but it was a very odd job indeed. He wore thick leather breeches and sat in a pool of beer for half an hour. If his breeches stuck to the stool when he stood up, the beer had too much sugar in it. Knowing the right sticking factor to determine quality must have been a real art. In medieval times, ale was kept in vessels of standard sizes with 8 pegs on the inside to measure the amount of ale. Now, you could say that people are rather like vessels, and if from time to time we get a little full of ourselves, well, then others would be quite justified in saying that we needed taking down a peg or two. And that's where the phrase comes from. I think I might take this down a peg or two. The old saying, good wine needs no bush, comes from the fact that early innkeepers used to hang out a special bush to indicate their trade, so most pubs were known as the Bush. But there are over 55,000 pubs in Britain, so how on earth did the rest of them get their names? Well, in the Middle Ages, not many people could read, so the innkeepers used to put out pictures. And since most people knew the religious saints, they knew that St. Peter would be holding keys and St. John would be holding a lamb. So pubs were allowed to be called the Cross Keys. Well, there's a new way of spelling keys. Or they'd be called the Lamb. And this one's called the Red Lion. There are over 600 red lions in Britain, perhaps because when James I of Scotland came to the throne, he ordered that his heraldic symbol, the red lion, be displayed in public places. And here's another red lion. And another. Don't worry, I may be on a pub crawl, but I'm not on a bender. That comes from the old saying to bend the elbow. Here's another popular name, the King's Head. Normally they show good old Henry VIII, but it can be any king. That one looks a bit like Charles II to me. So I wonder what the beer's like. There are almost as many words for getting drunk as there are pub names. For example, drunk as a lord. That comes from the theory that only noble people had enough time and money to get drunk. And then there's the World War II influence, like getting loaded, smashed, bombed or blitzed. And then there's good old blotto, which literally means to obliterate, to blot out everything completely. Ah, here comes the food. Wow.
Good afternoon.
What have we got here, Barry?
Well, we've got local lobster, local smoked salmon, and smoked chicken, and of course the oysters.
It looks good enough to eat. Thank you. Where do I begin? This is wonderful, a feast. I think we might use the magic of television and some time lapse here. Phew, well, I managed to eat everything but the oysters, because oysters are supposed to be an aphrodisiac, so called because of Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love. But I've always thought that music was supposed to be the food of love. And wait, what do I hear? Coming ever closer. Join me in part 2 for some music. Cheers. At election time in the USA, brass bands used to play on wagons and parade through the streets. Local leaders jumped on the wagons to support their chosen candidates. And that's where the phrase, jumping on the bandwagon, comes from. However, this is the Martlesham Brass Band, and they're very good, considering some of the instruments are bigger than the musicians. To blow your own trumpet means to boast about yourself, and the illusion comes from heralds who used to introduce knights at a jousting tournament with a flourish of trumpets. And 1, 2! Woodbridge is quite a musical place. I think I'll do a little more exploring. I wonder if I can find that violin shop. It's somewhere around here. Good morning.
Morning.
Is it okay if I have a look around?
Yeah, sure. Help yourself.
Thanks very much. Clearly, this is the place if you want a violin. If you were to tune your violin string very high, it would mean the string would get very tight and it might break. So that's where the saying highly strung comes from. If your nerves feel something like this, then you're probably highly strung. Mine, of course, are something like this. I'm very relaxed. I think I'll have a chat with Russell Stowe, the owner of this wonderful shop. Is it okay if I join you for a moment, Russell?
Yeah, sure.
I've just been looking at some of the instruments back there, and of course most violin shops have their instruments at the front, the workshop at the back. You've got the workshop at the front, which is great. You can see what's going on.
Well, there's a lot of light as well for a workshop,
Yeah.
and it's nice to work in the front, but also people walk by the window and like to see the instruments. Less intimidating.
It certainly caught my eye.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that violins are strung with catgut. Is that true?
No, it's a bit of a myth. It might sound like catgut when you're first playing the violin, but it's actually sheep's intestines.
Sheep's intestines,
Yeah.
so it's sheep's gut.
Yes. Yes.
But you've got lots of words associated with the violin to do with the body, haven't you?
Yeah. For example, you've got the belly.
Yeah.
If I turn the violin over, you've got the back, and then you've got the ribs on the side, followed by the neck, and then there's the head.
Can I borrow the front of that violin you're working on?
Yeah.
It's just occurred to me. Now this suggests to me a well-known everyday saying. Let me guess what it is? That's right, a bit of a fiddle. I think perhaps I'd better stick to the piano. Piano is short for pianoforte, which comes from the Italian piano e forte. Piano is soft, and forte is loud. And that's something the early keyboards couldn't do. Now this is a bagatelle. It's a musical term for a very short and simple tune. A mere bagatelle has come to mean something quick and easy to do. And of course it's easy to play a tune with your 5 fingers. But imagine if each finger had a string attached to it, and at the other end of each string was a different person. And the only way to play a note was for that person to pull the string. Then you can see the whole process becomes infinitely much more complex. A bit like bell ringing. This is Icon Church, not far from Snape Maltings and Aldborough. For years, the ringing of bells has been used to call people to church and to announce important events like weddings and funerals. Bells have also been used to warn people about invading armies and dangers such as fire. Bell ringing was originally carried out by the local clergy, but by the 17th century the task was taken over by parishioners. Unfortunately, some of these honest bell ringers got the reputation of being layabouts and drunks, probably because there was a big barrel of ale laid on for the ringers. These days, some of the bell ringers would be too young to go to the pub anyway. It's a complicated business, bell ringing. You have to master all kinds of different combinations. A major, a minor, a maximus, and even a grandsire triple. Richard, you're a tower captain and a member of the Suffolk Guild of Bell Ringers.
That's correct, yes.
Why are you tying the knot in there?
It's just to make sure that the rope is out of harm's way, not trailing on the floor.
Oh, I see. There isn't a special signal to say that the bell is stood
In this
or...
particular case, this knot is indicating to most bell ringers that the bell is in its up position.
What exactly is ringing the changes?
That is where we, instead of ringing the bells in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, we actually change the order of the bells each time we pull the rope.
So what exactly is a peal of bells?
A peal is actually defined as ringing 5,000 changes.
That many?
Non-stop.
5,000 changes?
Non-stop.
Non-stop.
That can take us anything from 2.5 to 3.5 hours.
I imagine you would need a big barrel of beer if you
Oh,
were doing all
definitely.
that.
Most definitely.
Well, the bells have stopped, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to pop up here and have a look at this view for myself. You can certainly see any advancing armies for miles around. Trouble is, I can still hear bells. Not big bells, but little bells. Lots of them. I hope I'm not going bats myself. So, I wasn't going crazy after all. I could hear lots of little bells. Morris dancing has its roots in ancient fertility rites, and some of the graphic details are slightly too graphic and too detailed for us to explain fully here, so best left to the imagination, I think. If you were hit on the head with one of those sticks, you'd certainly know about it. You could be maimed for life. Perhaps that's why a collection of Morris dances is called a mayhem, from the word to maim. Morris dancers all carry their own beer tankards around with them, and that's why when they get together for a dance, it's called an ale. Mike, a lot of people think that the word Morris actually comes from Moorish. Is there any truth in that?
Well, there may be a little. It's so old that we don't really know. Some of the original dances may well have come from Spain, but they are also related to all kinds of areas in Europe and even, we think, to some of the old traditions in Africa.
And what about the horse and the fool?
They're both very old, and the horse traditions actually have been grafted onto the Morris from other areas. Shakespeare, of course, had fools in his plays. And one of Shakespeare's fools, in fact, gave rise to a very good phrase for your phrases and was the 9 Days Wonder. And that, of course, was Will Kemp. And Will Kemp left Shakespeare's company and danced from London to Norwich. And he took 9 days on the road.
Morris danced?
Morris danced, yes, and hence the term the 9 Days Wonder.
This dance is called the Quaker, and it involves waving around handkerchiefs. The word kerchief comes from the French couvrir, to cover, and chef, an old word for head. If you wore one round your neck, it would be a neckerchief, but if you wave one around, it's obviously a handkerchief. I think I might take this down another couple of pegs or two.
The places we know,